Welcome back. Well, today I have Dr. Hovanessian here with me from Harvard Eye, and nice to have you with us. Nice to see you again.
Lisa, it's always great seeing you.
And it's great that we actually can say seeing each other, right? Because we have great vision, and I go to the eye doctor probably once a year. I'm fortunate enough to have great vision. And the one thing I always wanted to know is, I always ask them, I say, why do you make me put that thing over my eye? Couldn't I just close my eye? How come they make me do that?
Well, it's to close the eye with an occluder or the palm of your hand instead of just squinting. The problem is when you wink like this is your other eye closes a little bit. And you'll notice if you do it, there can be a little change in your vision. The eyelid comes down a little bit when you wink one eye, and that can cause a little astigmatism. It can change the way you see. So
Oh, isn't that
we
interesting?
do it.
Well, I'm glad that you helped clarify that, because I never knew and I never asked. And so this kind of leads into what we're talking about is, when you have to look at that eye chart, there's that huge E. Would that be like the worst vision ever?
Unfortunately, there are conditions in people who can't even see the big E on the eye chart. We below that we ask people to count fingers, and we do it at different distances. We determine if they can see motion of a hand moving, or we'll just determine if they can perceive light out of the eye if it's worse than that.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, really, you're essentially legally blind if you can only see the big E on the eye chart with an eye. But of course, with glasses, we try to correct that. We try to get everybody to 20/20.
So at what point on that chart is 20/20, and is that perfect vision?
Yeah, it's a great question. So 20/20 means that you are sort of like the average person. If the average male is 5'7.5", you're 5'7.5". You're not taller, you're not shorter, you're in that range. So many people can see better than 20/20. Some people don't see as well as 20/20, even with a perfect healthy eye. It's just the way we're built. But 20/20 is a standard that for corrected vision works for most of the population. But 20/20 vision is considered high contrast vision. High contrast means that when you look at that eye chart, it's a dark black letters on a bright white background. And even in the example of the eye chart in the picture here, there's some gray around it. And we notice, okay, well, wait a second. The world is really not, stark whites and blacks, but it's many shades of gray. And so if we really want to get an idea of what's happening with vision, we have to look at different shades of gray. So we have a picture of an eye chart that is in shades of gray. It's what we call a low contrast chart. And we can have, you notice as you get further down the chart, the letters don't get smaller, they just get fainter. And the more faint letters are indeed hard to read. And toward the bottom, I challenge anybody to see, probably on this chart you can, but on some of these low contrast charts, it's very hard to see them. And so that's designed to see, how well can your eye discriminate subtle shades of darkness.
So if somebody has better vision than 20/20, is that like a hereditary thing?
It probably is. It has to do with, how perfect the eye is in focusing. There are things we call higher order aberrations that all of our eyes have. When we make a telescope like the Mir, telescope in space, we try to go beyond just focusing it. We try to eliminate all sources of imperfection in the picture. And so we eliminate those higher order aberrations. We also try to eliminate something called glare and scatter of light, which are pretty easy concepts for most of us to understand because we encounter them a lot in our daily life.
Okay. All right. And then I just wanted to clarify that. So then when you look at this chart and you're going from dark to light, what's causing the light to change or the fade?
Simply the way that it's printed, of course, is what makes the chart become more faint. But the way it challenges our eye is that our eyes are really designed in multiple ways. We have some of the cells, our cones are more discriminate color, and they have fine detail. But our rods are more light sensitive, and that's why when you are trying to find a very faint star at night, you shouldn't look directly at it. You should look just to the side of it because you bring in more rods that are more light sensitive. Mm-hmm. Similarly here, we probably are using more of our rods to detect edges. Edge detection is an important part of image formation, and complex edges that we see in our everyday life, our brain assembles into concepts like, what is a car versus what is a tree versus something else. Because without thinking about it, we recognize those common objects. But we're also barraged by challenges to our vision. I mentioned glare, for example. And a perfect example there is if you're driving near dusk, and our sun is so bright here in Southern California, and you have a little bit of a dirty windshield, it's fine if the sun is behind you shining forward because you see the world well lit and clear. But if you're driving toward that sun, the sunlight coming toward your car hits the windshield, and all those dust particles and other imperfections on the windshield cause the light to scatter in 100 directions. And so what your eye sees is everything, bathed in a bright light, and that is low contrast vision. It's why it's hard to see.
Mm-hmm. How do you correct something like that?
Well, clean your windshield.
Well, that's an easy answer.
Well, and so of course, what I'm getting at is it depends on what the cause is. And so you really have to go to the cause, because the world's best eyeglasses don't help you see through a dirty windshield. And the world's, best eyeglasses also don't help with conditions like cataract. The most common two conditions we see that cause scatter of light would be cataract and would be dryness of the eyes, or an imbalanced tear film. Because when you don't have a glassy, smooth layer on the surface of the eye, it's not going to see well. When you have a cloudy lens inside the eye, that's cataract, the light rays coming in are treated just like the windshield that's dirty, and it causes them to scatter. And so people who have fairly advanced cataract can do fine under a lot of conditions, but when there's bright light shining toward them, they're disabled. It's hard to drive, it's hard to read, it's hard to do anything detail-oriented.
And glasses can't help that, right?
A little bit. They will sometimes reduce a little bit the glare we experience. But generally, it's a very limited benefit because they're not correcting the problem at its source.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Well, that's good information for sure. And, of course, when they come to visit you, you check for all of these things.
Yeah. Part of a good eye exam is to first ask questions about these things. We're big on understanding what's on our patient's mind and what they experience in the real world. Second is doing an exam. And sometimes we do a glare test where we put you looking toward an eye chart and shine a light toward you. And this is in a machine that we use, and it measures how much loss, how much below 20/20 you end up when there's glare. And that's a very useful indicator of problems like cataract.
Oh, I love it.
A good exam takes that all into account.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the information. I appreciate it.
Interesting stuff, isn't it?
All right, thanks, and we'll see you again soon. We'll be right back after this.